Join me today as I create in my art journal, and God challenges me to get out of my comfort zone, both in terms of a colour that I'm not quite comfortable using in my art, but also in terms of the people that I'm prepared to interact with for Him. Right, I'm sitting down to create in my art journal, and the page I've chosen has a lot of very bright red paint on it, and the first thing I want to do is tone that down because it's just like, wow, very overwhelming. But the interesting thing is that as much as I try to get rid of it, you will find out at the end of the video that it comes back in a big way, and there's a reason for that, so stay tuned. So my first strategy to calm it down a bit and get started is collage, and I'm sticking, because I'm just so overwhelmed by colour, I'm sticking to quite neutral collages here, and I'm pulling out book pages and old bits of old newspaper, painted papers, paper bags, things like that. So if we haven't met before, my name is Jenna Byrne, and I help people encounter God through mixed media art journaling. I love to work in a really intuitive way, so at this point in the process I have no idea how the page is going to turn out. I'm just playing, experimenting and going with the flow. And now I'm sticking down my collage pieces using some matte gel medium. To tone it all down a bit and to blend in the collage pieces to the page, I'm now adding some white gesso, and I'm spreading it around with a little bit of credit card to get some interesting marks and texture going. So it's about this point in the process that I noticed that a couple of the pieces of collage that I've put on the page remind me of India. There's a piece of newsprint that actually came from India that I brought back with me when I went to India quite a long time ago now, gosh, probably 20 years ago. And there's a piece of white paper with some interesting patterns on it, like a kind of relief in the middle, and that made me go and fetch a little stamp that I remembered that I had, that I brought back from India. It's like a wood block for printing with, probably used for printing fabric, and so I went and found that. It's in a kind of heart shape, and I'm using that to print a border at the bottom of the page. And it occurred to me that this stamp has some kind of text on it that I've had this stamp for years, but I don't know what this text says. I don't know if there's anyone out there who can interpret it for me. And I'm just remembering my trip to India and how it felt to be in a foreign country that was so different culturally from my own. I'm also really attracted to this lady, and I'm sure many of you will recognise where she's come from. She is actually the logo for Starbucks. This is a Starbucks bag. I believe she's a mermaid actually in her entirety. But she has a lovely face, and I just feel really drawn to incorporate her on the page somehow, although I don't quite know why yet, but I'm just going to go with that instinct and stick her down. back to this idea of being in a foreign land, I suddenly started thinking about what the Bible has to say about that, because all through the Bible there is a theme of being a foreigner, being in a land that's not your own. So the people of Israel experienced this a lot. They originally nomadic, but God calls them to the promised land, and they live among people who are not like them. And there's this sense of the Israelites being set apart, and an expectation from God that they would look and behave differently from the other tribes around them. And that carries into the New Testament, of course. We're told that we as Christians are to live as foreigners in the world, that we're to be in the world, but not of the world, as Jesus tells us in John 17. Now, I put way too much of that blue-grey paint on my palette, so I've decided just to go for it and use it up, and I'm really enjoying how it's just picking up some of the more textured collage pieces below. So as I was thinking about us being like foreigners in the world, I was also reminded that Jesus said, "My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one." So it's not that we should hide away from interacting with the world, but that we should pray for God's protection as we do so. So why do we need to interact with the world, and perhaps with people who aren't Christians, people who might be very different from us? And then I thought about what Paul said when he was talking about preaching the gospel, and he said, "Though I am free and belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews I become like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law I become like one under the law so as to win those under the law." And then he goes on to say vice versa. "And to the weak I become weak to win the weak." So he's saying that he actually goes into a culture different from his own and learns about it, understands it, and even imitates it in order to win that people group. And that's what we're called to do. We're called to bring the gospel to every type of people under the sun. And at this point in my creating, I was just overcome by the love of God for his bride, that he would go to any lengths to win her, that Jesus came down to the earth from heaven to a place that was, dirty and smelly and full of sin and evil, and he was in a culture that was not of his own. His culture was the kingdom of heaven, but he came to earth to be part of our culture, to win us, to save us, to die on a cross for our sins, and to win us back to him. And I was just overcome by the lengths that he went to in doing that, but continues to do today to reach people. It's not his will that anybody would be unreached by the gospel, and we need to have the same heart for the world, for people who don't know Jesus yet. So what am I doing here, putting all this red on this lady, bringing back that scarlet colour? Well, she is becoming an Indian bride. So I don't know if you've ever been to an Indian wedding or South Asian wedding. I have. I had the privilege of doing that once. And the brides invariably wear this bright scarlet colour that I started with on my page. And so I decided to make this lady into a bride, but not a Western bride, but an Indian bride, a bride of a different culture, because Jesus's bride is of a different culture. It's a mixed cultural marriage, if you like, isn't it? And Jesus would go to and has gone to any lengths to win his bride. And so then I was thinking, well, Lord, what does this mean for me? What do you want me to do? And I decided to do a bit of journaling about that now. And I was thinking, well, I'm not, at the moment at least, called to go to some far off country where the culture is different. But there are people all around me whose culture is different to me. I'm about to move house. I'm not going far. I am actually just going a few miles down the road. But even that, I'm joining a different community. And will I take the time to find out about that community and what their priorities are and what matters to people there, and how things are done there, which might be different to what I'm used to. Am I prepared to be humble enough to listen and get to know people, and in order to show them Jesus's love? And I was also thinking about my children as well, that their culture is different from my culture, and increasingly so as my eldest heads into kind of teenage years. And sometimes she comes home talking in a way that is a bit odd and using words that I wouldn't use. And and am I going to just roll my eyes, or am I actually going to take time to understand youth culture today in order that I can still be relevant to her? I actually get a great email called the Culture Translator, which is actually designed to help older fogies like me understand their teenage children, and kind of what they're into in terms of music, and what slang they use and things like that. So there are people all around us who are different from us, I guess, is the point that I'm making. And sometimes it's easy to think that we're only called to preach the gospel to people like us. And sure, yes, we are, but what about the people who are different to us? They just take a little bit more effort. But I believe that that's really, the heart that Jesus wants us to have. He wants us to have a heart that's inclusive, and that would want to love and to win for the gospel all different types of people. So I felt that was the challenge that God was presenting to me today. What about you? Is there someone in your life that you have felt a little bit nervous about approaching or befriending? Maybe somebody a different age to you, or from a different culture, or whatever it might be. And what could you do to maybe reach out to them? Maybe it's just a smile, or a little act of love or encouragement in some way. So I'll leave that thought with you. I'm just finishing off my beautiful bride now with some gold paint, because their veils have all this beautiful gold embellishment on it often, and then I think I'm about done. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, could you please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you found it thought-provoking in any way. It's always lovely to hear from you. I also wanted to give you a heads up that something very exciting is coming along in May. So if you could put May the 13th to the 19th in your diary. I have gathered together a number of artists like me who do art journaling and who love the Lord, and together we are going to do a week-long extravaganza showing you how art journaling can be used in the context of your faith. So there will be a different artist for each day of the week, showing you their own unique take on faith art journaling. So if that sounds fun, then you can head over to my website and sign up. I really hope to see you then.